My friends, the Elias Pettersson trade discourse is going full throttle here on Wednesday, June 17th, 2026. We've got some Canucks news, some Canucks rumors, and some Carolina Hurricanes guys to talk about. Some noted Stanley Cup champions, mind you. But before we dive into all that, let's talk about the actual piece of news that the Vancouver Canucks gave us earlier this morning. It's Chase Wouters, the captain of the Abbotsford Canucks, who has just re-signed with a 1-year, 2-way contract. Now, the Canucks have actually been making a few signings for their AHL club over the past few days. They gave Chase Wouters a deal. They gave... who is the guy they traded for Jet Wu? Cole Clayton a deal. They've been handing out some contracts here and there. We haven't been making videos about them because, unfortunately, they're AHL guys, but still, good for Wouters. Great captain. $425,000 salary in Abbotsford. Huge raise for a great leader. That's awesome to see. Wouters is a heart and soul guy that was able to produce a decent amount of points for the Abby Canucks over the past few years. He captained the team to an AHL Calder Cup championship, so especially with him wanting to stick around, that's a pretty good piece of business, I would say. Canucks signed him, they signed Cole Clayton, they also ended up signing, there was one more guy as well, Jack Thompson. Yes, that's who it was. They got Jack Thompson for Jet Wu, not Cole Clayton. I'm an idiot. But anyways, with the AHL signings underway, let's talk about the NHL club and where things can be going with Elias Pettersson. I'll open this video up by talking about what Drance and Dhaliwal were speaking about on the Donnie and Dolly Sportsnet 650 crossover earlier this afternoon. They're both talking about how teams are calling on Elias Pettersson. Thomas Drance then adds that teams are doing their homework, which could mean this is real. So, okay, great. Teams are doing their homework on Elias Pettersson. What does that mean? Well, it means that teams are legitimately considering this guy as a trade candidate in a free agent market, which is going to have pretty much no available top 6 centers. You're thinking about a lot of trade discourse for the centers that are on the trade market instead, which include Elias Pettersson, maybe Nico Hischier, Vinny Trocheck, maybe Matthew Barzal. These guys are going to get a lot of interest from NHL teams because there are just no other centers available, and teams need centers. Rick Dhaliwal and Don Taylor spoke on Donnie and Dolly about how there's lots of chatter that teams are calling about Elias Pettersson. This was then summarized by Canucks News Summaries. Thank you to them for giving us the scoop. Lots of chatter that teams are calling about Pettersson. Dhaliwal says, though, he's not sure if the Canucks are looking for a center in return for him this time. He also doesn't understand the rumors about the Carolina Hurricanes still being interested in him. They were close on a Pettersson for Martin Necas trade. Now, where is Dhaliwal coming from? What are the Hurricanes trade rumors that have been tossed out there, and what's this got to do with Martin Necas? Well, yesterday, you had Jeff Merrick and David Pagnotta on the sheet talking about the Elias Pettersson trade situation. Merrick asks, would you do Elias Pettersson for Jesperi Kotkaniemi plus? Pagnotta says, I think they've tried that. Merrick said, I think they have too. So, yeah, that's Stanley Cup champion Jesperi Kotkaniemi to you, folks, going out there and potentially being tossed into a trade for EP40. We did make a video about this multiple days ago. Maybe it was like 2 weeks ago, something like that. But it was something along the lines of, hey, if the Carolina Hurricanes are really interested in your guy, like they have reportedly been in on Elias Pettersson the past few years, if they're really interested in your player, you best better keep your player. Because if Carolina wants them, it means they're probably good. It means that they've done their homework. It means that they see something in the player that is worth trying to reactivate in Pettersson's case. In Martin Necas' case, it's like, okay, well, the guy was wanting a little bit more money than the Hurricanes were willing to give him, and that's why they had him in trade talks. They sent him to Colorado. They got Rantanen back. It didn't work out. They got Stankoven instead, and then they won the Stanley Cup. I think they did some pretty good business there. But Merrick's update with David Pagnotta essentially says, hey, Pettersson for Kotkaniemi and more seems like something they have tried. Now, Dhaliwal, he's saying that he's not sure where this is coming from. Hey, like, why are the Carolina Hurricanes being talked about as a Pettersson destination? Didn't they just win the Stanley Cup? Seems like they've already accomplished their goal. But they were close on a Martin Necas trade. That Martin Necas has been pretty good for the Colorado Avalanche. He went from a guy who produced, 83 points in a 79-game season to a 100-point player in 78 games. Martin Necas legitimately went over to his new team and became a 100-point scorer. And it's not even just, he only does that because he's playing with McKinnon and Makar. He was over a point per game at the Olympics, too. 8 points, 5 games for Czechia. That's really, really solid. Necas is a guy that I actually was a really big fan of back when he was drafted in the 2017 draft, multiple spots behind Elias Pettersson. Thinking about it now, if the Carolina Hurricanes were able to get Petey instead of Rantanen, would they have been able to win the Stanley Cup with this caliber of a guy? A player who had 45 points in 64 games that season, and who put up 51 points in 74 games the year after that? I get that Pettersson was playing on the worst team in the NHL, but if Carolina makes that trade, if they get Pettersson, they don't make the Rantanen deal, then they don't make the Stankoven deal, Pettersson stays in Carolina, does Pettersson have that same chemistry with Jackson Blake and Taylor Hall that Logan Stankoven did? I certainly don't think EP40 has the work ethic that a Stankoven displays on the ice. Maybe this trade being avoided resulted in Carolina getting themselves that Stanley Cup. Although it does sting a little bit to hear that Martin Necas could have been a Canuck and that he wasn't able to get that through. For what it's worth, though, I have seen some criticism tossed Necas' way. He was a point per game in the playoffs, yes, but you look at the points that he had scored against Vegas. I mean, that's not great. 1 point in Game 4, 1 point in Game 3, 0 points in Games 1 and 2. Not really indicative of a 100-point scorer. Now, as it pertains to Jesperi Kotkaniemi, the conversation on him has actually gotten pretty interesting as well, because you have Frank Saravalli, who posted his buyout candidates list earlier this morning on Hockey247.com. And Jesperi Kotkaniemi, front and center, he is the guy. He even said so on the Kevin Karius show. Frank Saravalli thinks that the Hurricanes are going to have a Jesperi Kotkaniemi buyout. So you have some analysts and insiders saying, hey, do you think the Hurricanes could trade Kotkaniemi for Elias Pettersson? And then you've got another insider saying, yeah, no, I think they're buying this guy out. Which I think would make sense. They didn't use him at all in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Kotkaniemi got 42 games played on the dot, which is just enough for him to have been given that right to have his name etched on the Stanley Cup. You saw all those games towards the end of the year where Rod Brind'Amour was scratching Sebastian Aho and playing Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Not only did that give Aho the rest needed to go out into the playoffs and, I'm not necessarily going to say dominate, he didn't do that, but it gave Kotkaniemi the games played in order to get his name on the cup. So that was a pretty masterful move from the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, he's making $4.8 million till the end of 2030, was a healthy scratch throughout the entire playoffs. Is this guy worthy of getting bought out? I'd probably say it's reasonable, but not everybody's thinking that. Maybe he gets traded for Pettersson instead. So with all that said, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the latest on the Elias Pettersson trade discourse, from Martin Necas' name being brought up once again to Jesperi Kotkaniemi being thrown into the mix? Thoughts on Chase Wouters, Cole Clayton, and Jack Thompson getting their AHL deals? Pretty good news out of the Vancouver and Abbotsford systems. Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And bye.